Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a recently leaked Swiss intelligence report, and honestly, it's a bombshell. It details a war that was so fast, so intense, it was all over in less than 4 days. We're talking about Operation Sindoor, a conflict that, believe me, just rewrote the playbook on modern air combat.
So the big question is, how on earth do you win a modern war in under 4 days? Well, we're going to get to the bottom of that by breaking down this incredibly high-stakes air battle that went down between India and Pakistan in May 2025. This wasn't just any skirmish. It was so packed with next-gen tech that, military planners all over the world are basically studying it frame by frame. It's the new blueprint.
Yeah, you can forget everything you know about long, drawn-out campaigns. This thing was just a blur, a super high-tech, lightning-fast clash from the word go. And honestly, it's that sheer speed, just 88 hours, that has analysts everywhere just scrambling to figure out, what exactly just happened.
Right, so the entire conflict played out over these 4 critical days, and each day had its own massive, dramatic twist. It kicked off with a huge surprise, then it morphed into this crazy war of drones and data networks, and it all wrapped up with one final, you could call it a knockout blow. So let's break it down day by day.
Okay, so let's start with day 1, May 7th. This is when it all kicked off. And those very first hours, both sides laid their cards on the table. And the results were, well, they were absolutely deadly.
So India makes the first move, and it's a big one, a powerful show of force. They send in their best jets, we're talking Rafales and Mirage 2000s, to hit militant HQs deep inside Pakistan. On the surface, it looked like a pretty textbook retaliatory strike, but the counterpunch that was coming, wow, it was anything but textbook.
See, Pakistan was ready, and they were waiting. They unveiled something that caught the Indian pilots totally, and I mean totally, off guard, a new missile, the PL-15. And its range? It was just insane. We're talking over 200 kilometers. That's a game changer. It forced the Indian jets into fights at distances they had never, ever planned for.
And here's the thing, even though India was flying some of the most advanced jets on the planet, they took immediate painful losses. That superior range of the PL-15 just completely canceled out their high-tech advantage. It's a really stark lesson, right? The missile can be every bit as important as the super expensive jet that's firing it.
Okay, so after the initial shock of that first clash in the sky, the battlefield it completely transformed. On day 2, Pakistan changed tactics entirely. They pivoted away from just using fighter jets to a whole new kind of threat, a massive coordinated drone swarm.
And we're not talking about a handful of drones here. Pakistan unleashed something like 600 of them, all flying in coordinated waves. Their objective? Well, it was as simple as it was audacious. Punch a hole right through India's most valuable defensive asset.
Their target was India's top-tier S-400 air defense shield. And the strategy, when you think about it, was brutally simple. The idea was to just saturate the system, throw hundreds of cheap drones at it, force it to fire off all its super expensive interceptor missiles, and then, once the shield was down, India would be totally exposed for the real attack.
But India had a digital ace up its sleeve. It's called the IACCS. Now, the best way to think about this is like a giant digital nervous system connecting every single one of their defensive assets. It pulled in data from tons of smaller, separate radars, which meant they could see the entire drone swarm perfectly, all without ever having to switch on the big, powerful, and very easy to spot radar of the S-400 itself. You see where this is going? It was a trap.
And this, right here, is where that Indian network showed just how brilliant it was. See, they weren't just playing defense. The IACCS let them completely turn the tables. They just sat back, watched the swarm come in, and waited, because the drones weren't the real target. They were the bait. Then, from an absolutely mind-boggling 300 kilometers away, a single S-400 missile fired. It wasn't aimed at a drone. It ambushed and took out a key Pakistani electronic warfare aircraft, the plane that was coordinating the whole attack. And in that one shot, bam, it was a devastating blow. Pakistan's eyes and ears in the sky were gone. They were flying blind.
And that move, that incredible ambush, set the stage for the final act. This is May 10th. With Pakistan's command and control in the air completely shattered, India launched its final decisive offensive, the one designed to end the war right then and there, Operation Sindoor.
Now, this wasn't just another airstrike. It was a massive, coordinated barrage using what you can only call a lethal cocktail of advanced missiles. You've got the BrahMos, the Scalp, the Rampage, and the key here is that they all fly differently. Different speeds, different altitudes, different flight paths. It creates this incredibly complex, multi-layered attack that is just an absolute nightmare for any air defense system to try and stop.
And the impact was, well, it was devastating. The Swiss report says the strikes were surgically precise and just completely debilitating. They didn't just damage things, they effectively neutralized Pakistan's ability to even get planes in the air. We're talking runways cratered, hangars destroyed, command centers gone. Game over for their air operations.
That one overwhelming strike basically broke the back of the Pakistani Air Force. With their air bases in ruins and their command network shattered, Islamabad requested a ceasefire. India had achieved complete air superiority. And just like that, the 88-hour war was over.
So the fighting's over. What can we actually learn from this crazy, lightning-fast war? Well, the Swiss report pulls out some really key lessons that, frankly, could define how wars are fought from now on.
You know, when you really boil it down, this was a war of networks. Each side had a totally different philosophy. Pakistan used its Link 17 system. It's an offensive tool. It let their fighters fire those long-range missiles without ever turning on their own radars, getting guidance from a separate command plane. Super clever. But India's IACCS was the opposite. It was a defensive web, a resilient, decentralized system designed to soak up an attack and then strike back with deadly precision.
But ultimately, the report concludes that India's victory really came down to its absolute mastery of a classic military strategy, CAD, or suppression of enemy air defenses. Now, the idea itself isn't new, but the way India pulled it off, that was completely new.
India's whole playbook was this brutally effective 1-2 punch. Step 1, blind the enemy. They used these things called loitering munitions. You can think of them as slow-moving drones just packed with explosives to go out and systematically hunt down and destroy Pakistan's border radars. Step 2, strike. With the enemy now totally blind, the main missile attack, the BrahMos, the Scalp, could fly in and hit their targets without anyone even seeing them coming.
All right, so let's look at the final scorecard and talk about the really big picture here. What this conflict tells us about the future of warfare.
Now, if you just look at the raw numbers, you'll see both sides lost valuable aircraft. But honestly, those figures are kind of misleading. The strategic victory was completely one-sided. India accomplished every single one of its objectives and forced a ceasefire, all on its own terms. In the end, what this Swiss analysis really tells us is that Operation Sindoor is a terrifyingly clear glimpse into the future of war. And it leaves us with a really critical question to think about. Is this the new reality? Are we looking at a future of super high-tech, short, sharp conflicts where whoever wins the air battle in the first few hours wins the entire war?